It's Veronica Tash again. I want to remind you very much to think critically here. And even though it's not conducive to think critically going through the topic that I'm going through, it is important. I want you to think critically in analyzing that a problem exists. Then you can go think uncritically because we are bound to do that at some point. It has an evolutionary purpose, but it's very important to make sure that the threat is real. So pay close attention and analyze what I'm saying here before we freak out. Even though I've been freaking out for days now. Basically, we are in the middle of a coup. It is a fascist coup led by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They are actively taking over the country, and I'm not talking about obviously Trump was already installed as president, though it's illegal. He is not there constitutionally. I'll go over that somewhere else, and I'm going to tell you about that afterwards. And remind me if I forget because my mind is not fully focused right now. But we have what they're overthrowing is the U.S. Constitution, the actual order, the actual powers of government. Um, there is a lot that's being done right now that is blatantly unconstitutional, that is blatantly illegal. It violates existing law, and you. The goal is to put all the power in the hands of Trump, which is Elon is pulling the strings. It seems, as one might expect. Trump just wanted to stay out of jail or out of prison, rather, save himself from bankruptcy, and he's got that. Elon's free to run the damn country, even though he's not eligible to be president. And to remind you, Elon Musk was once an undocumented immigrant, but even though he likes to call it an illegal immigrant, he overstayed visas, and keep that in mind because he's such a hypocrite there. But let's get to the actual stuff that I want to lay out. And because I'm throwing this together quickly, we're looking at screens again. And I really want to get back to doing what I wanted this channel to be. Get people to watch this so that I get monetized and start working my way to having the time to do what I wanted this channel to be. But we want to go to one. Oh, yeah, here we go. Okay, so here we are. We are looking at a temporary restraining order. This started when Trump passed his executive order stating that he wanted to basically stop all funding in the U.S. government until he approves every last bit, even though he does not have the power to do that. The power of the purse has been decided by the Supreme Court again and again. It's clearly laid out in the Constitution. It belongs to to Congress, not to the president. Once it's been approved by Congress, the president has to go through with it, with very limited exceptions. He is taking funding that's already been approved and saying, "Oh, I want to see if it's good for my plan." Mind you, based on the results there are. He does not have by any means a sweeping majority. He actually only got 49% of the vote. Once all the votes were cast, he did not have the popular vote. That he had the plurality of votes, or at least his electors did. It's important to remember that only the electors actually get to vote for president. You didn't vote for president unless you were in one of those electors. You vote for the electors, but he did get his electors got more actual total votes than Harris did. Though I've been looking at a few things I haven't had time to delve into, but there has been a suggestion that that Elon may have forged things in the 5 swing states only in the early voting, where there may have been vote flipping. I was watching something where they're on Jessica Denson's thing, and I was not taking it seriously before I started watching. But only in the 5 swing states and only with early voting, Trump is outperforming in every single voting machine the next closest Republican candidate, whereas Kamala was underperforming in all those same ones. You don't see that in mail-in voting or on election day voting, just in those, and that may have been enough to turn a tight election. And there's, of course, other issues involved. Obviously, Trump does not have a mandate, and if he did have a mandate, it would not be for these things that he did not. His voters were not under any impression he intended to do. At least the vast majority of his voters did not think he was going to do that, despite many, many people saying, yes, he's planning on doing this. But he lied and said he didn't know anything about Project 2025. He had at least he knew what it was when it came up. He just may not have known all the details beforehand. But he put that freeze on all federal spending. We have first a court order putting a restraining order on what he was doing. And I'm going to scroll to the bottom here, or near the bottom. So I was looking at this earlier. So 2 final factors show the balance of equities. Try to go show the specific wording that I looked at. And that's why it's not good to throw this together at the last minute. But I do work full time and go to grad school beyond that. So I do not have a whole lot of time to get things prepared as is. I would like to replace my current job with this, but this needs to make money, and right now it makes me zero. Actually loses me money. But okay, here we go. No, that's not. Anyway, somewhere in here, if you were to search through this, he does specify, or he speaks generally, rather, he doesn't specify, that you do have limitations on any, of any impounding of money. And so we have orders of temporary restraining order until the case rules on the state's forthcoming motion. During, defendants shall not pause, freeze, impede, block, or cancel or terminate defendant's compliance with awards and obligations to provide federal funds assistance to the states. And this part is specific to the states, but he had a more general one earlier in there. This is Judge McConnell. We have the blockage in there, but there is language that is general as well up there. I'm not going to have you sit here while I go try to get it. That's going to be incredibly boring. But we have a second one. Lauren Ali Khan, and maybe that doesn't go that close together. I'm not sure. But she also put a restraining order on the federal freeze on what was this on Friday? She did a second one here on Monday, talking about this. We have restraining orders. We have before that Supreme Court judgments, decision saying, "Hey, you cannot impound funds." We were over this before, with Trump, but he's going to try to do whatever the hell he wants to do, even though it's blatantly unconstitutional and illegal. But there's court orders saying that. And it's sort of important here. Elon Musk. Elon Musk was, they created um, they renamed the U.S. Digital Service to the U.S. Doge Service, which is really stupid. But that's what they did. They created a special Doge Department of uh, government efficiency within that's supposed to last for 2 years. I'm not sure if he was actually officially appointed yet or not, but regardless, he's definitely not been through much. And he went in to this is from February 2nd. Talk, and this happened before that, but he went in, took over OPM systems, Office of Personnel Management, and took all federal employees' information that's kept by OPM and put it on an unsecured server. And unsecured servers are a big no-no. Do you remember the whole what they called it? I want to say email gate, but the Hillary Clinton scandal, where it was a legitimate scandal, where she had a private email server. The Office of Inspector General there, while Kerry was in office, so this is Obama's second term, went over and said, yeah, that was the most blatant thing. She was told many times she couldn't do it. She did it anyways. Here's Elon doing that and taking a whole bunch of information that he didn't have the right to. And we're going to go over why he didn't have the right to that information. Because remember, he is a part of a subsidiary of the U.S. Doge Service at this point. He is not part of the Office of Management and Budget. Or not management, but Office of Personnel Management is OPM. And we have 2.2 million federal employees there. And I could show you another time, but it's not for everybody. There were exceptions. And for example, every single person who works in the office at Social Security was exempted. They are not eligible for the fake buyout that they don't have the actual authority to carry through, because there's an OMB rule going back to 2016 that you can only have 80 hours of administrative leave. They're proposing 8 months of administrative leave, so they're going to leave everyone out cold after 2 weeks. That's why they were given that short period to accept it, more likely than not. Though it's always possible that they're just going to break the law, because that's what they've been doing. But he took all that information. Why? The hell if I know offhand. There's nothing that is clear and obvious, but my best guess is that his intention is to use that information to take any federal employee who is actually upholding their oath of office and saying no to this stuff, as we have seen people do, not in OPM, but we do have stories coming out from Treasury, which is going to be next, who said no, they upheld their oath of office. And what are you going to do? Oh, we have their personal addresses, we have their bank information. All that will make their life a living hell. Possibly send Nazi thugs out to attack them. That there's no reason with what Musk is doing that he needs to have this kind of information about federal employees, period. But we have the Treasury payments. And so he did go and do the same thing with Treasury. And you do have the head of Treasury said, no way in hell are you getting this. And I think this is where they also have the two security officers that also said, no, you can't have that information. It's not legal for us to give that to you. And so Trump put them on administrative leave. That's what they're doing right now. They're not firing people because that gives legal rights to appeal. That gives a whole bunch of it's much seems much more harsh, so the public could be more scrutinizing if you actually fire them. But you put them on administrative leave, and oh, they're out of the way, and we can do what we want to do. But he took that, and he put that also on the unsecured drive. You're looking at, um, you know, over 300 million people are. He has your information. He has your social security number, your address, your bank information. If you're in the United States and you've gotten a tax return, or I imagine if you paid taxes, even if you weren't due money back, he has your money thanks to what he did at the Treasury. Um, and this is what he has not in an official government capacity at all. It's on an unsecured server. They just broke in and they're going agency to agency stealing federal information. And there's a lot of talk about that. I'm not going to read through that. By all means, look this up here. And then this is what happened today. After judgment saying, no, you can't do this, you're on a restraining order, he took that access he stole from the Treasury, and he has actual power over it at this point. He decides what gets paid and what's not. Trump isn't impounding it, Elon is. And what is Elon impounding? USAID, its entire agency. And he decided he is going to shut the entire agency down. It's an agency that was passed by, that was in 1998. It became officially agency of the United States government after a bill creating it. It's been allocated funds. They decided, no, we're taking it all away. And they're going to tell you lie after lie about what they found. Trump's still on about saying Hamas has condom bombs when it went to Gaza, Mozambique to fight AIDS. And it wasn't, I'm sure it wasn't $50 million worth of condoms, because that's an insane amount of condoms. But if it was, 50 million is a drop in the bucket when we're talking about government agencies. The actual total budget, but they're going to use that to try to overthrow the U.S. Constitution by lying to you and telling you things in the most misleading ways possible. This is stuff that was approved by Congress or has gone through and has a public comment about what they're spending it on. And they're just making stuff up so that they can get away with that, to trick their followers. And if you are one of the followers listening, please think critically, look at this here. There's redemption potentially for you. Unless you're a straight up neo-Nazi, then, fuck off. But anyways, they went in blatantly illegal, unconstitutional, and he's taking information from there left and right that he does not have legal access to. Why does he not have legal access? Because that's what we're going into next. There is something, and I'm sure many thought, if you're a federal employee watching this, you should be familiar with this law. It's probably been drilled down your throat over the years. The Privacy Act of 1974. What does the Privacy Act do? Privacy Act requires that agencies give notice of assistance, blah, blah, blah. You can read through that. But what it does is it says that when a federal agency has information on a person, they cannot just give that to someone else. This is what I heard a story years ago. Guy was working for the IRS. A guy came in, did discussing tax issues. He was dealing drugs. I think he may have even been dealing to kids. That guy, that IRS worker, went and told the local police. What happened in the end? I don't know what happened to the guy who was dealing drugs, but the IRS worker got fired immediately, immediate termination. Why? Because it was illegal for him to disclose that information to the police, at least through the way he did it. There would be an official channel where, if it were considered significant enough of a public threat, that you would do something. But agencies cannot tell, not only can't tell random people, they can't tell each other unless there is a specific exception written in. And if you go to this here, it's going to give you long thing about specific exceptions, usually mostly of what's going to go, you're not allowed to share anyways. But you go to an easier document from HUD talking about Privacy Act exceptions that exist where they can release information, including from place to place. By the way, this is why if you go to the VA and you need to go, they're asking for you for proof of where, how you, when you served and all that. It's because the Department of Defense cannot legally tell the VA what that was, because there was no exception given to them for that. They have not gone through the proper channels to create that exception for them. That is why you have that huge issue. That's a big issue for veterans because of the Privacy Act. And the Privacy Act protects you from so much. It's what keeps the federal government limited for a large part. But prohibits agencies from disclosing information on an individual without that individual's written consent, unless the disclosure is pursuant to one of the 12 statutory exceptions. That is to those officers and employees of the agency which maintains the record who have a need for the record in the performance of their duty. So this is within the same agency. So, for example, it's illegal for two workers to share records for shits and giggles. You have the right to that privacy. Two, when disclosures made under the Freedom of Information Act. So, Freedom of Information Act gives some loopholes where information can be shared outside of that agency. To the Census Bureau for the explicit purpose of planning or carrying out a census or survey. You can share information. It has to be relevant to that. You can't just give whatever to the Census Bureau. It has to be tailored to that. To a recipient who has provided the agency with adequate written assurance that the record will be used solely for statistical research or reporting record, and the record is to be transferred in a form that is not individually identifiable. So this would be, let's say you have, political scientists going through and trying to get information about disability denials. They can't know that Tom Jones got denied in 1994, but they can know that in 1994 there were this many denials for this many for this reason, this many for this reason, et cetera, et cetera. Data like that is pulled out of, stripped of any identifiable information. To the National Archives and Records Administration for historical preservation, if the archivist determines the record has historical value. That is something where it can be released. And that's usually not about, living people anyways, but, for that purpose. To another agency or to an instrumentality of any jurisdiction within or under the control of the United States for a civil or criminal law enforcement activity. That's when you can do a lot of the interagency stuff. For a civil or criminal law enforcement activity, if the activity is authorized by law, and if the head of the agency or instrumentality has made a written request to the agency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not law enforcement here. Them trying to figure out how to cut all our benefits has nothing to do with law enforcement. So that does not apply there. I want to keep that in mind. To a person pursuant to a showing of compelling circumstances affecting the health or safety of an individual, if upon such disclosure notification is transmitted to the last known address of such an individual. So, for example, if you as a private citizen are there and the FBI finds out that Al Qaeda is trying to kill you or Daesh is trying to kill you, they can potentially send a letter to you saying, to the last known address for you, saying, hey, your life is in danger. That's an exception. That obviously doesn't apply here. To either House of Congress or to the extent of matter within its jurisdiction, any committee or subcommittee thereof, any joint, I think it should be, but joint committee of Congress or subcommittee of any such joint committee. Yeah, there's definitely a T missing because they spelled it with the T in the other case. But you can give it to Congress for the purpose, for specific purposes. Obviously, this isn't giving it to Congress. To the Comptroller General or any of his authorized representatives in the course of performance of the duties of the General Accountability Office. Remember, that's for the General Accountability Office, not the U.S. Doge Service, which is a completely different agency. It was the U.S. Digital Service before. Finally, pursuant to an order of a court of competent jurisdiction. So judges can order that you give them information because it may be relevant to a case. Finally, to a consumer reporting agency in accordance with the Debt Collection Act. So and that's basically when you're reporting that somebody is delinquent on a debt to the federal government, so it goes on your credit report. That's what that is. So this is just, some basic information from HUD. And just to show you, if you go here, this is a whole act here. I was looking at something else I went to. But anyways, that wouldn't have helped. But it's of legalese with a lot of comments about this is generally considered to apply in such and such a case. The important thing is that Elon had no right to that information. And it's very important to know that he did not have the right to that information. This is information about you that was improperly disclosed to him because he basically took it by force. Elon is very much a criminal right now. He should he basically robbed federal agencies of information. He should be behind bars for the rest of his life with the information he took. With what he did with that information, that he seized power. He locked actual federal employees that have a purpose, who serve this nation day in and day out, who are underpaid compared to their private sector competitors. When you figure in, as Congress did initially, how much work they do compared to the private sector. They sacrifice for this country, but they're locked out. The people who are actually doing it for the purposes that the U.S. Constitution, that law says that they're supposed to do it, the people who have been upholding this law for their entire careers, locked out. But Elon Musk goes in and steals it all, keeps it from the people who need it, and decides he's going to steal it and tell, oh, I'm going to impound funds and stop it, even though he shouldn't. People are being warned at USAID, do not go into the office because he has seized it illegally. And you have to stop and think about why this is. Why are they doing this? It's because they are taking power that is not theirs, where one person or through one person, all decisions are made. Because Trump's not making the decisions. We know he is freaking cucked at this point. It is obvious and out there. I don't understand why he is not, having a little hissy fit over this because he's cucked. He looks incredibly weak and pathetic right now because Elon is just walking all over him, using him, and he's going to get them both fucking in deep, deep shit. And when I say deep, deep shit, I think that you're going to have a situation. He's going to get kicked. Either he's going to be impeached or there's going to be revolution in the streets. And I do not think it's going to be the left that's going after him. I think it's his own followers. Why? Because when they figure out what he's pulled over them and they cannot do the cognitive dissonance anymore, when prices in the grocery store are up 200% from last year, they are going to want blood. When people, it's very hard to convince somebody that they've been fooled, but once you convince them, they will blow up. And so he's playing with dynamite there. But very important, we are looking at a coup right now. And that's what you should be worried about. You should be freaking out about. You should be contacting your congressman and talk about your state representative and both your senators. I don't care if they're red. I don't care if they're blue. I don't care if they're Bernie Sanders or if you have any other independents right now. You need to contact them and you need to be livid. You need to be pissed the fuck off while you are talking to their office about how this is unacceptable and why are they not working on impeachment right now. He is violating the U.S. Constitution. He is violating laws openly and wantonly. He is giving fucking Elon Musk access to records he shouldn't have about you. Elon Musk has the power to destroy you right now, destroy your credit, to steal your identity. He has that power because Donald Trump allowed it. Donald Trump went on and said, yes, I'm okay with him doing this. You need to be asking them why they would allow this. Their constituent. And you need to make them afraid of not impeaching him. I'm not saying threaten violence. I'm not saying that. But they get the message that if the rule of law is not being followed, they are nullifying the social contract. That's what the Constitution is a written social contract. And what makes things happen? Why was the Civil Rights Act passed? It was not because people were moved by by the arguments. It was equally Democrats and Republicans for the most part who were supporting the Civil Rights Act. And it was because they were afraid of rioting in the streets. So you need to convey that anger. Because chances are your representative doesn't give a shit about what you think, but they do care about what you might do. So you need to make it very clear that you are angry and you want Trump's impeachment. Immediate. And they will do it because they don't want to go down with him. And if you are very clear that this is unacceptable, that you will not allow yourself to be walked over, you will not fall to fascism, That's what it is. And I'm going to describe fascism right now because it is so often misunderstood, especially because people try to focus on historians, where historians, though they know a lot about the specifics, they try to make the specifics into it, which is not good for understanding it as a political theory. And I'm going to go look through Metatron's Metatron's video on what is fascism uh, later, not today, but I got to go through it because he gives a lot of bad information because he thinks like a historian, not like a political scientist. And when you want to understand fascism, you look as a political scientist. If you want to understand how Italian fascism was different than German fascism, then maybe you want a historian who's going to go through and tell you all the little differences. But you want to look at broad strokes. What is the idea behind all this? And the best definition I saw came from Ball and Dagger. Do I have that right here? Let me take a look really fast if I can pull that up off camera. So I know I got somewhere here, but I don't want to look too long. But there's a basic textbook from Ball and Dagger that covers all the different political ideologies or major political ideologies at the time. I have an old 2004 book. They've added on another author since who helps them. I don't know exactly what the current version of the book looks like at the moment. But they laid it out. And every other definition I've seen, you could take things and lump them together and make these three categories. And even though they don't say explicitly, when they talk about fascism, you're looking at, here are three different counter Enlightenment movements that came up in what is called the reaction. Now, keep in mind the actual reaction, which is 19th century. You're looking at like the 1820s through the end of, till 1900 for that counter Enlightenment. They generally would only follow one of these at a time. Sometimes you get someone to have two. Fascism incorporates all three. They are rejections of Enlightenment ideals, the ideals this country was founded upon. These three things are, first off, nationalism. You might remember Trump saying, I'm a nationalist. What's so bad with that? Nationalism is about thinking that, first off, there are specific people that belong to specific pieces of land naturally. And it's a big thing that you have national purity. National purity, you look at the nationalists from like the turn of the 20th century, they're arguing that having a German in Italy ruins Italy, and having an Italian in Germany ruins Germany. And for example, the Zionist movement that started was nationalist in itself, but it was also a reaction to European nationalism. They felt they were by being Jewish in Europe, they were ruining these countries in Europe, and they needed their own place for only Jews. And that's what basically set off everything in Israel, because the Palestinians that were there, they loved the Jews that were coming in, the Zionists that were coming at first, because they were opening up stuff. They were bringing in this big European money. It was new economic opportunity. They got jobs there. They would work for Jewish people in these settlements, and they were happy because it was good money. And then you had the whole nationalist thing, which the Ashkenazi Jews wanted, but not the Jews that had been living there for years. It was very, very prominent Zionist guy who helped set things up, who was not from there, who was warning the Jewish Congress, do not do this. You're going to make enemies. It's decided that we have to prove our national character by only Jews work on the settlements. We're going to do everything ourselves. And then it turns from you're joining the community to you're taking our land at that point. You're just coming in, keeping your European passports, and staying there. That's nationalism. Under fascism, nationalism also has a lot to do with submitting yourself to the nation. Your will is submitted to the nation. It's a very specific form of collectivism, but it's for not the collective of all, or not for the good of all, but the good for the collective state, which is then seen, as we'll talk later, through the fascist dictator. Second thing is irrationalism. And irrationalism has to do with the original rejection of the idea that of rationalism. You don't believe that the truth can be known, or you believe that there is no truth at all. Though the big thing that fascists do, their very common expression of irrationalism is operational, and it doesn't necessarily deny a truth or that the truth can be known. It's that what matters is not what you, the peon, believes, but what you believe will make you do. So if you believe that Democrats are eating babies and I'm not even gonna say it right now because I don't want this whole thing to be less promoted because of what I say. I already have a low enough audience as it is. But the whole QAnon conspiracy nonsense. What does that make you do? It doesn't matter what you believe. It's when you believe that, oh, now you're only going to listen to us. Oh, now you'll believe other crazy things that we tell you. Oh, now you're going to attack our enemies for us and make them afraid. That's the whole point of QAnon. It is operational irrationalism. It is lying to people to get you to act emotionally rather than rationally. And that's why I try to start all these videos when I can remember. If I'm writing a script, I'm remembering saying, think rationally. Why do I say that? Because studies show that actually works. Just reminding you makes you more likely to think rationally. When there's fear involved, you're less likely. This is a time that you need to be afraid, but I'm going to try to temper that by telling you to think rationally about all this. Things definitely matter right now, but that is what's going on. That's why Trump is lying. That's why he's talking about condom bombs for Hamas. Does that make any goddamn sense? If so, as I've heard it put by someone else, this is not me. Why are we not saving shitload of money by building our own condom bombs? This is freaking ridiculous. And I don't remember where I saw that. I saw that from somebody. I feel like I heard it said. I may have read it. A lot of things, I don't remember exactly where I got it from. I know when I heard good points, I know when I got it from a legitimate source. Pointing out to exactly which legitimate source might be a little bit hard for me right now. But that's why I showed you a lot of things that were showing what I'm saying here. The third and final thing is elitism. That you believe in the natural hierarchy of people. There's many different ways that can work. And usually you have a lot of different ones in fascism. A very common one is sexism. Men above women. Fascism tends to be very, very male centric. It tends to focus on manliness to stir the warlike man in people. Obviously in men to make them there. And it wants women to be subservient and sit there and you're just baby machines to create new soldiers for the future and new mothers to create new soldiers in a later future. Um, Obviously, Nazi Germany is a very specific one. And this is often they'll say, actually, Ball and Dagger say fascism plus racism equals Nazism. I don't think that's the best description. I would say fascism, where one form of elitism is racism, is Nazism, or where racism is a central form of elitism, perhaps the best way to put it. So you have one group over another. You have Germans over Poles over Jews, as you saw in Nazi Germany. Or maybe you'll see um, Ashari Sunni Muslims over Shia Muslims over Kurds, as you saw in Iraq. Because Saddam Hussein was a fascist too. The Ba'ath Party was created as a fascist party. And the United States supported them back then. But, or at least in Iraq, we supported them because we want to get the leftists out. But you may also see, what do we have in, what kind of elitism do we obviously see in Israel? Ashkenazi Jews over Sephardic Jews over African Jews over Arabs over Christian. Well, Christian, your white Christians are going to go above the Arabs in Israel. But you get my point that you have that clear racial hierarchy. If it's fascist, that makes it Nazism. It doesn't have to be Jews at the bottom. In this case, the primary, or I guess you'd still say primary, importantly, the earliest victims of the Holocaust based on ethnic grounds. They focused on killing the socialists and communists and anarchists first, or throwing them in concentration camps at least first. That happened years before. But when it comes, those same people were at the very bottom of the German hierarchy, at the very top of the Israeli hierarchy. It does not have to be one way or another. And yes, Israel does have the nationalism, obviously, and they do have the irrationalism at this point with all the lies that Netanyahu was putting forth left and right about the hostages, even though most of the people did catch on, because in Israel they hate Netanyahu because Netanyahu he was too busy trying to kill Palestinians to save the hostages. That is the Israeli narrative. That's not what you hear here. But there's you also, of course, most importantly, you have your class hierarchy. You have like in Italy, you have the dukes. There's a council of dukes. I don't remember the specifics. And then you have you'll have the bourgeoisie, and then you have this highly stratified society that's very, very strongly elitist. This isn't subtle elitism. This is basically, it has to be a systemic issue. You have to have stuff that is codified for that, and we do have that here, and we have Trump trying to very much push that even further. Those three things that I mentioned, and there's other forms of elitism you can come up with. That's not the only kind. But that's also why you have the strong man at the top, the fascist, the leader who's in charge of everything, because his will is the nation's will. So that is what you're submitting yourself to. You're willing to die for that leader under fascism. And that's what Trump wants. That's why he pardoned the January 6th people, including the Proud Boys and all that, who were very much violent and killed cops, because he wants the people who will die for him. That he wants you to be that too. He wants you to be willing to die for him. And Elon wants you to die for him too. This is very much the point. And It's very abnormal to see the fascist leader, Trump, cucked by Elon like that. It's really pathetic as far as fascism goes. But that's what we have here in the United States. And we have extremely quick attempted takeover. It's coming at rapid pace. And why? Because they don't want you to have time to fight in the court. They want to have everything done before anybody in Congress grows a spine. And I'm not just talking about Republicans. The vast majority of your Democratic leaders there, they served the oligarchs for years, and they're too worried about fucking civility. There were when after warning everybody that this was about democracy, and it wasn't because we didn't have democracy before. We still had an oligarchy. The oligarchy's undressing. It's getting naked. But we already had the oligarchy. I've talked about Gillens and Page several times before. Watch another one of my videos and you're going to come across it. Look up Gillens and Page otherwise, and you'll see the paper. It's right there. We had an oligarchy at least back into the 80s. But it's getting very, very naked at this point. Very obvious. And the Democrats are too busy saying, we're going to go and we're going to show that we're better than you, even though we're warning you, warning everybody. Oh, see, this is how transition of power works. It's like, no, you don't need to infantilize fucking Donald Trump about that. You need to be doing something about the serious threat that he poses. If you're going to give him power, which he should not have, because what they should have been saying from the beginning, back when Biden first decided he's going to run for another term after saying he was going to be a one-term president, is Donald Trump is not eligible to be president. He, on January 6, 2021, the January 6 insurrectionists were actively trying to overthrow the U.S. government then by physical force. They were levying arms against the United States government. That made them enemies of the state. And that's a very specific term. You are at war with somebody when you are an enemy. It's not somebody who you don't like. It's somebody you are actively at war with. And they initiated a war against the United States government. Donald Trump, after instigating it, and that's not his treason. But after instigating it, he sat there and he did nothing while it was going on. He gave them aid and comfort by his inaction. All he did is complain that they looked poor. Why did my supporters look poor? He knew that the people who were doing that, all that violence, were his supporters, and he was upset that they looked poor. That was his concern. He didn't care about the cops dying. He didn't care about democracy, the Constitution that he was sworn to uphold. He was concerned that he thought it looked bad that his supporters looked poor. It reflected bad upon him. But by his aiding them, giving them aid and comfort, by his inaction, required to take action to protect Congress, to defend the nation, which he did not do. He was derelict in his constitutional duties, his oath, and all that. He committed treason there. That's his treason. It's not the riling people up. That's not enough to be there. That is very specifically defined in the Constitution what treason is. That's not it. When he was giving him, basically being a bitch for Russia, for Putin. No, that's not treason. We're never at war with Russia. That's why the Rosenbergs got away. The court ruled, or they didn't get away, but they got away for the treason charge. And that's because the courts ruled we're not at war with Russia. You have to be at war for that treason. And so anyways, the same definition of treason, once somebody has taken an oath to the United States or one of the states, and they do the same thing that constitutes treason, they are not eligible to hold office unless 2/3 of each House of Congress removes that disability from them. A supermajority of both houses. That vote never happened. That vote was never suggested. Donald Trump is not legitimately the president of the United States because he is guilty of fucking treason. And he did not have that disability removed by Congress. And he never will have that disability removed by Congress in the clothed oligarchy. Democrats aren't going to vote for that. A lot of Republicans aren't going to vote for it, especially after the shit that he's pulled. But they're fine with pretending. Let me tell you, every single one of those Democratic politicians that aren't saying anything, aren't doing anything worth a shit, they are violating their oaths of office. They are not upholding, like the OPM director or the guys who said, no, we're not letting you into our systems. They were upholding their oaths. They are fucking heroes. They are the people who are serving this country. Donald Trump is nothing like that. The Democrats, are sitting there and saying, oh, let's throw trans people under the bus. Oh, fuck the immigrants. They are not upholding their oaths. This stupid civility nonsense. Their oaths require them to oppose Donald Trump as an enemy, a domestic enemy of the United States. That's what every federal employee's oath requires of them. In this time, that's what every a member of Congress's oath requires of them. Why are they not drafting articles of impeachment? Why are they not talking about them while they're being drafted and saying we are going to remove Trump? Because they don't uphold their oaths. Because they are used to working for the oligarchs. Who do you see? You see Bernie Sanders saying something. You see AOC saying something. Then you get some, ooh, Trump's icky from other people. Ooh, maybe I'll oppose this one nomination. No, you need to be talking about removing him from office because he is a traitor and he is right now trying to hold a coup, overthrowing the United States government. You are violating your oaths by not doing something. There are some people who stand out and they do what they're supposed to do. But it's not your Democratic congressman. Quite frankly, the way it stands right now, unless they shape their asses up and do something to stop Donald Trump, you should not consider voting for them if we have the luxury of elections. It should be, hell no, I won't vote for a Democratic fucking traitor who is giving aid and comfort to an enemy of the United States right now. Maybe not technically an enemy because it's not technically rate levying arms against the United States, but still, you should not be considering that because they're abandoning us right now because they're not willing to do their fucking jobs. And that is what we need to be focused on. I'm going to go back into this. I have something that will tell you that I saw it elsewhere and I opened it up. I see it, click it, share the information there. I put it in the description where you can find your congressman. You can yell at them or yell at whoever is working for them about what they're doing in their dereliction of duty in this time. You can't wait for the courts. They're relying upon you to try to use the court system right now because it'll be too late by the time anything happens. He is in violation right now of temporary restraining orders. What are they going to do? Do you think the courts are going to throw Donald Trump in prison in contempt? No. It's going to be the Andrew Jackson Trail of Tears bullshit. The court has made their decision. Now let's see them enforce it. Somebody has to enforce it because I don't want to rely upon a goddamn military coup to overthrow the fascists and reinstate democracy or whatever frickin' semblance of democracy we had. What? Do you know how ironic that is to be thinking about a military coup and thinking that's a democratic option? But it is in this moment because our elected officials are falling down to try to look civil. What the fuck is civility going to do? That doesn't win voters. That's why you fucking lost. Because nobody gives a shit about civility. They care about their lives, about their safety, about their security. And you are foregoing that because you are worried about civility. You want to be nice. You don't want to get your hands dirty. This is people's lives on the line. And so please raise a ruckus. If necessary, why do we have this ability to be irrational when we're in fear? Because in the presence of a true threat, being ungovernable is effective. In saying, you cannot govern me. I will not, saying, what was the Rage Against Machines song? Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. That if a large enough proportion of the U.S. population is saying that, that matters. But they want to control you by fear. They want to control all of us by fear. Some of you, you're on their side, and so they don't need to control you yet. They got you controlled with lies. They don't need you to fear them. But they're trying to put fear, and they want you on their side while they do it and pushing it along. But that's not where we get. That's not the American dream. You want things to get better. Stop focusing on people who are oppressed. They're not the problem. If we have illegal people here, you know what? I don't give a shit because they give more than they get for the most part. There's a handful of them that are violent, but that is a smaller proportion than people who are here as natural-born citizens. Those are the statistics. People who are here unlawfully, that they're undocumented, that they're not supposed to be in this country right now. By through birthright citizenship, they're less likely. So that's not my concern. If MS-13 is working, yeah, you have people who target MS-13, not immigrants in general, and they're not taking your job. And I'm not going to do the stupid liberal bullshit thing. Oh, now you got to pick crops in the heat. They shouldn't be forced to do that anyways. They should have equal rights when it comes to working for things. But the big thing is when they get paid that money, you know what they do? They spend it. And that spending creates new jobs. And when we have more people paying in, Social Security becomes solvent. You know why it's not solvent? Because you have the goddamn income cap. Because we have lowering number of youths who are working. And that's basically the population's getting older. And that's largely because of the third thing. They can't afford to buy a family because the wages are frozen. The wages are supposed to be increasing with productivity. That's what creates the solvency. But they've been frozen for 50 years. We've improved. I have a video on it. You can find it. It's one of the few that's not under live. It's under videos about is profit theft. You can look at the exact figure because I did pull it up. But it's like you're 2.3 or 2.8 times as much that we are producing. That's the effectiveness of our work, but we get paid the same. It's not keeping up. They've been keeping everything for the past 50 years. Even though Gillens and Page only found back to the 80s, I guarantee you, 1973, when I'm counting that from, the oligarchy was already there. That's why wages have been frozen. And however you want to deal with it, fascism is not the route. Donald Trump's bullshit, driving us apart as a nation, creating divisions where people are trying to rat out other people. That's not bringing a community together. He wants to remove everyone who's against him and then tell the people, oh, see, now you got all this togetherness because you're united against your fellow countrymen. And I'm going to be, I already have stuff. I want to talk, do it. I got edit my goddamn Jefferson video that I don't really like editing. I loved it when I did anime music videos, but doing editing myself talking, I hate it. And I can't afford an editor. So it's, even though I got it shot, I need to do a whole bunch more. But I want to do one on explaining privilege because it's not what you think. And no, you're not bad if you have privilege, because it's not your choice to have it. Long story short, it's just how society treats you differently. And that's all it is. And it'll make a lot of sense. If you're on the right, if you hate the idea of people saying you have privilege, once you watch the video, you're going to sit there, you're going to think critically, because I'm not going to be rounding people up like I am now, because I am very emotional right now. But I'm going to lay it right out for you. You're not going to think. You're going to say, yeah, privilege is a valid concept, and people have been misusing it, both on the left and the right. It's not just the right that's been misusing it. A lot of people on the left have been misusing it because they feel it empowers them, when they obviously don't understand it. I may talk specifically about trans people, explaining what we are, why we are, how it works, using science, not using just people yelling shit and making things up. Because you realize that the official government policy under the Trump administration right now is that we're all women. Every single one of us. If you ask Donald Trump, he's not going to say that because he didn't mean to say that. But if you look at the text of the damn executive order, it's based on conception. And it's not till 6 weeks after conception that men differentiate from women. And that's why you have women who've been for as far back in history. They didn't respond to testosterone, so their body stayed female. And they can't have kids. They have a womb, but they can't produce eggs. But they're cisgender women. We've always recognized them as that. We still recognize them as that now. But by basing it at birth, we're all women. But we're going to look at how it really works. And you're going to see some crazy stuff that could be really eye-opening. So if you're on the right and you're looking at this, give yourself the opportunity to see trans people are not a threat. In fact, what they're trying to convince you of, I'm going to lay it out. The people who are most trying to convince you that trans people are threats, they're the ones who are actually doing stuff with kids. And then finally, that is the third thing. Third thing is going over how, the actual threat that is created and who's actually the threat. And I'm going to do this by laying out actual studies, actual news stories. And I'm going to show both, I am going to show both sides of it because it helps build an image of how it is. Because it's not just people on the right who do stuff, but it very much is people on the right who are trying to make you afraid of that, who are very much overrepresented people who abuse children. But we're going to get there next few weeks, hopefully. In the meantime, contact your congressperson, get angry, get riled up, and make them feel your anger. Make them do their jobs. And I'm going, I think I went something like 2 hours. No, hour, 10 minutes. Given what I covered, that's pretty good. Thank you. Have a good night. And remember to think rationally for most of the time.